Hello folks, Phil Gallagher of ThrabenU here for another Legacy video. Today we are going to be playing with Dan S's Spirits deck list. Now, like with a quick glance at this, you can see this is a tribal deck list, right? And you can see lords like Supreme Phantom and Drogskull Captain as some of the big draws of kind of being in this archetype. If you've played with or against Legacy Slivers before, you know how annoying something like Crystalline Sliver can be. When your creatures become hexproof or shrouded, they're very hard to remove. Now, Dan's build specifically has two cards that don't tend to see play in this archetype that we're going to be trying out today. First is Spell Queller, which is a counterspell on a spirit-flavored stick, and this card is pretty good, but a little slow by Legacy standards. Most Spirits decks in Legacy tend to play Daze in this slot, so we'll see how this performs. I'm just worried that Spell Queller is too slow versus the faster combo decks that are in Legacy, like Reanimator and Doomsday. On that note, this build also features Remorseful Cleric, which is a slow but main deckable piece of Graveyard Hate for the Reanimator type decks. If you can use something like, say, a Mausoleum Wanderer or a Force of Will to go and make it past turn 1, Remorseful Cleric is a good way to lock up the game. One of the other big draws to this deck is like that you get to be a Aether Vial Spirit of the Labyrinth deck, and shutting off your opponent's cantrips can be really strong. I made minimal changes to the main deck from what Dan submitted. I think I added one land. These Spirits decks tend to play 20 or 21 lands. I think on a Daze version, you could probably get away with 20, but I think if we're trying to play additional 3-drops like Spell Queller, I really want the 21st land. And I also added in a pair of Skyclave Apparitions as a catch-all answer to stuff. Dan's deck list had Teferi Time Raveler, but I think I'd rather have something that works with both my Aether Vial and my Cavern of Souls. Generally speaking, I am going to try to avoid double pip cards that are off color, or, well, okay, that are not Cavern of Soulsable, I guess is a better way to say that. I made one exception with a sideboard card that I put in, and we'll get to that in a second. I don't think I have too much else to say about the main deck. Just to highlight this card in case you're not familiar with it, Rattle Chains is something that gives your spirits flash, making you like telegraph something like a Spell Queller less, and an instant speed Spirit of the Labyrinth is pretty gross, as we already established via Aether Vial. As far as the sideboard goes, I changed this quite a bit from what Dan originally submitted. I wanted more fast interaction than what Dan had. You know, I want to not just lose to these combo decks. And without Daze in the main deck, I think there's a greater chance of me dropping game 1 to combo. So as you can see here, I've added a bunch of things that just kind of allow me to either stop my opponent from putting multiple spells on the stack or stop things for free. The only like real piece of spice I have here is Court of Grace. I saw this in a handful of Spirit deck lists. This is something that I've played in a handful of white Stompy decks, but I want to remind you that when you're not the Monarch, you make a 1/1 Spirit creature token with flying. And that is on theme. Like, that is tribal, and so that is going to get our buffs. And if we're making 4/4 Angels instead, like, oh damn, we made 4/4 Angels instead, and we're currently the Monarch, right? Like, that's probably fine too. I don't think you can play more than one of these. It's a little rough on the mana base, and adding this card was part of the reason why I also wanted the 21st land here. I'm recording this on February 5th, so it's just a couple of days before the release of Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, and I'm super excited for that. Kind of on that note, if you have donation deck lists that you want to see featuring those new cards, I would be super happy to play them. That information is available in the video description. All right, let's go ahead and get to it. Please consider throwing me a like before this video begins. That's the easiest way to support my content for free. Okay, round 1 opening hand has one land. That's an auto mulligan. This is a weak hand. I'm not super happy with this. And the question is, how do I approach this? I probably keep it. And throw back the Swords to Plowshares. Like, there's some worlds where having that Swords to Plowshares is very important. And then there's some worlds where I really just need to be able to cast this Spell Queller on turn 3. Ooh, a counterspell. Alright. So we are probably playing against Blue-Red Delver, in which case I would really like to have the Swords to Plowshares that I pitched. But I think I need all 3 lands in case, as we just saw, I lose out on one of my, like, my Aether Vial. Alright, so this goes on Spirit. And I really don't want to get Wastelanded. I think I'm okay if I don't get Wastelanded, but Naked Rattle Chains is not really where I want to be. Alright. So, yes, we're doing that. I could technically wait until my opponent, like, maybe taps the Steam Vents to do something, but I think they're smart enough to, you know, not just, like, do something while I have the floating mana. I'm gonna give my opponent some degree of, credit here. Alright. I have to play this land. Obviously goes on Spirit, and I just kind of repeat the previous turn cycle. And once again, I'm still going to just be bad versus Wasteland. Alright, so I've made it safely through my opponent's turn. If they're not playing creatures, they've got, like, or cantrips for that matter. They've probably got removal spells and counter spells in hand. Well, that successfully got Hexproof. Alright, so I can now cast my spirits as though they had Flash. So this Remorseful Cleric has Flash for what it's worth. Get in there for my damage, and I'm just going to hold up Spell Queller. I will Spell Queller pretty aggressively. Like an expressive iteration, yeah. Absolutely. Let's counter that. Now, in case you're not super familiar with the text of Spell Queller, this does only hit things with CMC 4 or less. So I can't go and hit, like, big Murktide regions with it. That sort of thing is still going to be a problem. Alright, made it through that turn. Alright, I send in for 4. And then it's mostly a question of, like, am I willing to make one of my spells counterable? Maybe. I don't, like, really want to. But the sooner I put the pedal to the metal, the better. Because this... Okay, so that's sort of interesting, right? So they petty theft that back to my hand. And now they can cast that card without paying its mana cost. And then I just counter it again. Yeah. So, yeah. Opponent just realized what was going to happen there and got a kick out of it. Alright, that was pretty cool. I enjoyed that. I don't think my opponent probably did. Like, it's the sort of thing that's funny, but at the same time, it's just like, oh man, I just messed up. Alright. I get in for another 4. I got this Brazen Borrower as a thing that potentially happens soon. I think I'm gonna go ahead and play this. Like, if I get 2 cards out of this, I'm, like, super happy with that. If I don't, like, so be it. Like, yeah, that's fine. My plan for this turn just involves putting Remorseful Cleric in play and just hopefully... Oh, that was a shuffle, too. Okay, they did find a land. Delver is fine. And I'll go for an end of turn Remorseful Cleric. And I'd really just like to draw a Lord, because drawing a Lord means that I would have 9 damage this turn cycle instead of 6. Alright, always yield to this, and tick this on up. Oh god, Wasteland is so good. Absolutely. Wasteland keeps my opponent from playing Brazen Borrower next turn, unless they also have another land. So I do need to Wasteland on my turn. I'll go after the Steam Vents. Cool. So any two of these creatures connecting will kill my opponent, or Mausoleum Wanderer connecting will also kill my opponent. All right, nice, good stuff. So I don't have too much for Delver. It's probably just Path and Prismatic Ending. I don't think I want something like a Court of Grace. So I will have 5 answers to a Murktide Regent. 4 Plows, 1 Path to Exile. Do I need to keep Force of Will to increase that number higher? I don't think I can cut all my Force of Wills. I think I can trim. I think I can trim 2 for these cards. Because, like, most of my cards will end up trading with non-Murktide Regent threats. So it's okay if I cast a Force of Will or 2. I don't know that, like, I can be firing off Force of Wills willy-nilly. Force of willy-nilly? Okay, there's something there. Mind that in the YouTube comments for comedic value. Yeah, this is fine. My Hexproof Lord is going to be particularly good in this matchup. Like, keeping the Spell Quellers and Skyclave Apparitions from disappearing seems really good. Okay. Yeah, this hand is totally fine. I will be keeping this. This is a very good Aether Vial hand, and I'd probably consider, like, Force of Willing to protect the Aether Vial, depending on what my draw step looks like. There's a world where I force that to just keep my opponent from getting an early Murktide Regent that spirals out of control. Not going to do that. I have a lot of top decks that answer that. Okay, so I can get both of my basics, so I'm going to go ahead and fetch around a Stifle here. Grab Plains, play Aether Vial. Alright, cool, it resolves. Cavern of Souls would be an okay draw, so I can, like, do Supreme Phantom shenanigans kind of quickly. I don't know if my opponent will board in their meltdowns solely for Aether Vial. Like, it's not a super mana efficient answer to an Aether Vial, but, like, it does answer it. I guess it kind of depends on what the rest of their sideboard slots look like. I'm not too worried about what's on board currently. I'm going to try to hold Force of Will for Murktide Regent if possible. We're looking at another one. Another one starts to get scary. I'm going to hope that I can live long enough to trade with these in combat. Alright. File goes up. And see what we draw. Rattle Chains is something that I don't mind just casting. That's fine. Like, I don't want to waste lords by making those counterable. Nice, playing around Wasteland, just very good here. Stop. I do not like this. 3 of these might be the point where I have to just pitch. I'm not stoked about this, because this gives my opponent a pretty good opportunity to, like, cast a counterspell and then turn these into 3/3s. Or, yeah, 3/3s. Oh, right, that going to the graveyard also does that. But okay, they do have the meltdowns, sure. All in all, not good for me. Okay, Brazen Borrower hitting the graveyard would have gotten them to 3/3 status anyway. Alright, so I am taking 6 here. And then if my stuff resolves, I'm not in, like, the absolute worst shape. But my opponent's counterspells are going to be very good. Okay. I don't think I get to play around Daze here. I get to use my mana from Tundra exactly once, so I really need to use that to fire off a 3-drop. I think I'm going to fire off the Skyclave. Like, the Skyclave just absolutely removes one of these and doesn't leave me in a situation where it's just super awkward for me to block and then get Drogdskull Captain bolted. I'll crash in for my 2 because I'm not blocking this. It's a 3/3. And then hopefully I can play a Drogdskull Captain or Supreme Phantom on my turn and then trade with this. It's still going to set me up for, like, Lightning Bolt based blowouts though, unfortunately. If my opponent, like, uses a bolt this turn to answer a Skyclave, then, like, maybe these live. Yeah, I think I'm just a little too far behind on tempo to win this game. I am also just absolutely batshit terrified of Murktide Regent right now. Okay, that was no shuffle after a bit of a lengthy ponder. And then I'm going to go to 8. This is starting to be in the range of like a single Murktide Regent hit will kill me. So, how do I play this turn? Because I can play this Lord and Wasteland my opponent, but then I don't get to Drog Skull Captain. Opponent didn't have a daze previously. They pondered. They could have a daze now. I hope they don't have a daze. A Murktide Regent will beat me later, even if I Wasteland them, I think. I think I'm not going to Wasteland them to try to keep them off of Murktide Regent, because I'm getting one more land a turn or two from now is just going to be so much better than what I have going on. Alright. This is me not playing around the stuff, because I think that's how I end up winning here. Pyroblast. That's good. I guess that means I'm attacking for 4. And then next turn I can Wasteland and Supreme Phantom. Might have to play around another Pyroblast by missing damage. We'll kind of see how my opponent taps. Alright, an Expressive Iteration. Guess I should pop this out. Alright, so they skip over a land. Our clock... Okay, Wasteland is good for my opponent. So our clocks are pretty similar, right? So I go to 5 here, which means my opponent takes 2 more hits to kill me, but I also take 2 hits to kill my opponent. Ooh. And I'll probably just fire that off, right? And then wait to potentially play Supreme Phantom around days. The issue is that if I fire this off here and my opponent has Murktide, I straight lose to it. But I think if I play Supreme Phantom and then like hold back a Rattle Chains to block, a Lightning Bolt 2-for-1s me, because Lightning Bolt kills this. And then I lose this for blocking. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove this. I'm going to do it now so my opponent doesn't have a chance to like Brainstorm. And I'll hit my opponent down to 11. I am just in double Lightning Bolt range, and my opponent hasn't milled over or used any Lightning Bolts yet. So that alone is pretty scary. And it seems like my opponent does have Murktide Regents, so I think I'm dead to that. So I tried to play around Lightning Bolt and then lost to Murktide Regent. Okay. Skyclave does not answer that. I don't outright lose to a Lightning Bolt, but it's close. Alright, I get no attacks here. I'm in chump block territory. I lose 1 creature a turn to this Murktide Regent. And my opponent's not close enough to dead that I can just kind of limp over the finish line here. I have I'm on a 4-outer situation here. 3 swords, 1 path. And no shuffle. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Okay, sure. And goodbye, Rattle Chains. Oh? I guess you can, like, lightning... Oh, okay, you can Tarfire one of them. Sure, and that forces the block on my Lord instead. Yeah, that's really good. Not dead yet. Just very sad. Just very, very sad. I am dead to any sort of, like, Lightning Bolt, Tarfire, Seal of Fire sort of card. Well, okay, I guess not, like, the Tarfire ones. Okay, yeah, that does it, then Murktide Regent crushes me. Yep. Like, the only thing I have wiggle room to do here is board in 2 more Force of Wills to have more answers to Murktide Regent, but I think most of my cards that are currently in my deck are important against cards not named Murktide Regent. I think that just kind of is what it is. As a side note here, the banning of Ragavan definitely makes Blue-Red Delver better against a lot of decks in the format, oddly. So a lot of the, like, Aether Vial, Death and Taxes-y style decks, like, don't really give a shit about Ragavan, because they just have so many creatures that block with it and so many removal spells for it. And the Ragavans tended to just be, like, horribly toxic in the, like, blue mirrors. And so, like, just having more flyers, like the actual Delvers in the deck, definitely makes it so that my opponent's deck is better against me than it used to be. This opening hand is just okay. it's like really good if the Aether Vial works, and medium minus if the Aether Vial doesn't. Like, I'll absolutely need more lands if this Aether Vial does not resolve, and my wasteland is not, like, truly a wasteland here. I just, like, can't really use this to destroy one of my opponent's lands right now. Okay. So Vial ticks up, and then I'll have some choices to make. Given that I drew another land, I think I'm comfortable doing this. I'll go ahead and wasteland this. This makes it so that my opponent can't melt down my Aether Vial this turn. And then I'm going to go to my opponent's upkeep to play around Force of Negation. And in upkeep, I'm going to go ahead and try to answer this. Nice. And if I get to start putting in things off this Aether Vial before my opponent answers it, I'm in really good shape. Okay, nice. Vial goes up to 2. I believe I am willing to cast a Remorseful Cleric here. I don't super care if this creature gets answered. Like, if my opponent dazes this, I'm so good with them being set back that land. If they Lightning Bolt it, I'm good with that trade. And from there, I've got pretty good things to do with my mana. I still don't want my Aether Vial to get answered. Like, I would love to put in this Drogskull Captain, because Drogskull Captain plus Supreme Phantom is a pretty good combination in terms of keeping my stuff alive versus lightning bolts. Sure. Alright, so you Tarfire me. Other Spirit is +1/+1, so that doesn't take that out of range. So that just means I'll nuke a couple of lands from your graveyard on the way out. Every little thing matters in terms of keeping Murktide Regent and flipped Dragon Rage Channelers out of play. Alright, in this goes, yes, Phantom. Do you have a bolt? You don't have a bolt now. My stuff is super safe. Nice. Alright, pick that up. Land. Go to combat. Crash in. I respond right here. Absolutely respond right here. Yes. Drogskull Captain in. I thought this was going to be a 3/4. Okay, it is a Pyroblast, so my damage amount did not matter there. I guess, I guess like for Pyroblast specifically, I guess I fucked that up, right? Yeah. Yeah, I guess I let my opponent point whatever and then give it hexproof in response. Yeah, I messed that up. I had in my mind that this was going to become a 4/4. Yeah, I messed that up. Wasteland. Okay. Meltdown's definitely a thing that's good here. I'm gonna lose probably Tundra, yeah. And the Skyclave Apparition isn't particularly good right now. I have an anemic clock here, and I'm low on cards. My opponent's expressive iterations are going to be very good here. Could also just be a, yeah, this is a Murktide Regent. Alright, let's see if your last 2 cards are Force plus blue card. They are not. I think my opponent is still favored in this position, though. Like, my 3-drops aren't currently online, which is a huge deal. I don't know. And, like, my opponent's wastelands are still very good. Yeah. This is the sort of thing that I would like to Spell Queller. Alright, Ponder in the Exile Zone. Oh, but they don't have the land. Okay, that's... Oh god, that's so good for me. Alright. Cavern on Spirit. Attack for 1. I'll probably pretty aggressively Spell Queller, just to be hitting my opponent for more damage. Okay. I am still going to want to get a spell out of it. Like, I'm not just going to play it as a flash attacker. Okay, so my opponent is going for a Lightning Bolt. I mean, yeah. I will stop that. It's kind of awkward, right? Because if my opponent has another Lightning Bolt, like, you know, this is not going to end well for me. Alright. Alright, Lightning Bolt, safely tucked under Spell Queller for now. But another Lightning Bolt here means that my opponent gets to cast the first Lightning Bolt and kill both of my creatures. So this is a temporary measure. Oh, actually, another Lightning Bolt there doesn't actually do that, right? This is currently a 3/4. So it would take multiple lightning bolts to get to that point. Okay, a petty theft does that, so now they can petty theft Supreme Phantom. Alright, that works out pretty well for my opponent. Wasteland. I don't want my opponent to be able to cast a Brazen Borrower. I'm not, like, super on board with wastelanding my opponent, because it makes my opponent's wasteland better, like, in return. But I think I've got to do something here. Ugh. These cards are, like, Expressive Iteration is so good. If you've been playing Legacy, you probably know that, though, right? Like, that's, like, no secret. Every time Delver has a cheap source of card advantage, such as Brennan 6 or Expressive Iteration, things get just gross. I'm in this crappy situation where I can't really play out any of my spells. Like, I'm very happy to have the Skyclaves, because, like, they answer cards that it's important for me to answer. But it just so happens that, like, my opponent has been playing Expressive Iterations and cards that hang out in the Exile Zone that I can't immediately answer with them. Oh, don't Murktide me again. Murktide isn't answered by Spell Queller or Skyclave. Yep. Alright, 3 outs to that. That's not one of them. I probably just have to play this naked, right? Just keep my opponent from further backing up their board. This gives my opponent an opportunity to slip the Brazen Borrower into play where I can't counter it via Spell Queller. I am so tired of losing to Murktide Regent. Alright. I guess I attack with Spirit, and then Spell Queller my opponent's Brazen Borrower if they play at end of turn. They probably won't. Oh, they do. Okay. I'll counter it then. They could have something more valuable in hand. Yes, this is target spell. My opponent thought it was non-creature, which is why they cast it. So hopefully I stick my opponent with a bunch of cantrips. But you know what doesn't technically draw cards? This thing. I'm taking 6 here. Don't think I'm going to be in the situation where I am going to realistically race this, because, like, 1 hit plus a lightning bolt kills me. Okay. I mean, that's totally fair. I wonder if doing that is better than just saving the lightning bolt in hand. I am not 100% sure. It puts another thing in play that I have to respect, which is, like, maybe worth it. But if I don't chump block next turn, I just die to that. Okay, so let's go 2 mana. I'll play a Rattle Chains. It is counterable. Alright. I guess I'll target my Rattle Chains with that. Rattle Chains can have hexproof. Then I will play the Skyclave and junk Brazen Borrower. Now I'll crash in with this. There's a world where I'm not supposed to make this attack because a lightning bolt here is very bad, but since a lightning bolt already basically kills me, I'm not going to play around that. Yeah. Like, I did not expect to beat a lightning bolt removing Rattle Chains anyway, which is why I didn't play around that line. So, like, now I can lose the Spirit, or my opponent can just keep both halves. Yeah. We're dead here. What is that? Oh, and the festivities? Sure. Alright, absolutely dead here. GG's. Alright, I'm playing against a Yorion deck of some kind. My hand is kind of medium, but probably not worth mulliganing. I have some amount of mana stability if I am playing against a deck like Death and Taxes. And if I'm playing against a blue mid-rangey mush pile, I've got a couple of threats and an answer to an Uro in hand. I don't really think this Force of Will is going to be particularly potent this game. Let's fetch. It's probably pretty free for me to hedge slightly against a back to basics, right? Do this. Cavern on Spirit. And I think I'm just going to play my less valuable card first. This Supreme Phantom can pitch to a Force of Will if necessary, and the Remorseful Cleric can't. Like, there's some cards, like maybe a Sylvan Library, that I would counter in some worlds. The sort of metaphorical dream in this matchup is getting double Drog Skull Captain so that my stuff just, like, does not leave play no matter what. Ooh, leave Queller up? I don't think I leave Queller up now. I think I probably need to commit a Lord to the board and just increase my clock. Like, I don't want this game to drag on. I want my opponent to be dead. I can pitch cast something to Force of Will if I need to. Or rather, I can pitch one of these two cards to a Force of Will if I need to protect against, say, a Swords to Plowshares. Okay, which seems like is what's coming. I think I'm willing to protect the Drogskol Captain. I am the beatdown. Let's actually force and pitch the Spell Queller and just lean into trying to finish this game as quickly as possible. Yeah. Plan failed, sadly. Like, yeah, that's actually really annoying. That just takes all of the pressure off of my opponent and potentially opens me up to a counterspell if I want to double spell next turn. Alright. So, I am going to just play this again. And unfortunately, this Force of Will that I just drew is crap because of Teferi's top line. Yep. So, I am going to have to keep things like Icefang Coatl and Endurance in mind. My issue here is that because this Teferi is in play, I can't counterspell, or I can't like mid-combat Swords to Plowshares. So I think I'm just gonna get like blown out and die. And I'm in no like this game gets worse for me if I let it drag on. Yeah. So I think I lose here to an Endurance. Like, there's a world where my opponent doesn't have it, but it just seems so likely. Yeah. This is where I'd cast my Swords to Plowshares if I could. Yeah. So, I'll nuke my opponent's graveyard. Go back to sorcery speed where I can cast stuff and remove that Endurance. But, like, my opponent has 3 cards and an active Planeswalker that I can't kill versus my basically empty board. And I'm going to be in the same situation every turn where I am just dead to an Endurance. I have no real source of card advantage here. Yeah, alright. I'm going to throw in the towel here. Like, that's a Teferi that can bounce another thing and a 3/4 that I can't answer. We have reached the point of the game where my opponent has won. I play this Court of Grace. I can't. Prismatic Ending for X equals 3. What I want in this matchup. Could play something like a Grafdigger's Cage or an Uro. I could play the Path to Exile. I don't think either one is like super fantastic. I probably want to trim some number of Force of Wills though, like because of Teferi, and I don't want to like be 2-for-1ing myself against the deck that has so much endgame card advantage. Like as we saw there, once I am in top deck mode and my opponent is as well, my opponent is so favored in those scenarios because they have like their Sylvan libraries and Uros and Planeswalkers, and I don't. I guess the counter argument is that if I'm not going to win the late game, playing Force of Will gets me through the early game. Like, I play a couple of aggressive threats, I just Force of Will any removal spell, and I try to kill my opponent that way. Alright, let's not play the path, keep one more Force. And I guess if the plan is kill them in the game that I want to play, like, I can just dunk a Spell Queller. I don't think this hand wins. I don't want double Swords to Plowshares. I want more than one land. The Force of Will is pitching one of my 2 creatures. I don't think this hand wins the game. This hand also does not win the game, but I'm keeping it. I think I just lose this one to bad hand. Like, I don't really see a world where this hand ends up winning. Like, maybe that's a reason to go to 5. But on 5, just the card quantity deficit is so huge. Alright. Preordain, not Ponder. Alright. Putting this Supreme Phantom in play as a 1-power attacker is not good. I'm going to put one of these on Spirit, and I'm just going to get this Aether Vial going in hopes of doing something like meaningful. I potentially should have tapped the other way. My opponent can't back to basics me this turn. Alright. So I'm losing the Vial to a Prismatic Ending. I'm happier losing the Vial than I would be losing a creature to that, though. So, like, that's good. Alright. So I guess all this stuff is uncounterable. So I'll Mausoleum Wanderer and Supreme Phantom, and I'm kind of all in on the things that I currently have on board. Any sort of, like, Terminus Supreme Phantom type card is going to be gross. Alright. Do I want to junk this to counter that path? Probably. Alright. Mausoleum Wanderer was an uncounterable Spell Pierce. Like, they still got their card out of the path, though, so, like, that's totally fine for them. Oh, they have Abundant Growths, yeah. Alright. Not super hopeful, but I do have 5 power on board. The opponent goes to 15. There's a 3-turn clock currently. But, like, my opponent's shit like Endurance starts coming on now. Like, Uro's in the discussion, too. Alright, it's a Prismatic Ending. Alright, well, this is really good if I can cast it. But this clock is pretty anemic right now. Got some protection versus something like an Endurance. Or an Ice Fang stealing the Monarch. Yep. So now, like, Teferi starts to be very bad for me. Alright, it's Yori into hand. Got a Swords of Plowshares for that. Got 2 Swords of Plowshares for that. Like, damn, I want to play this Court of Grace. Alright, is the Yorion just going to be a draw one? I'm fine with that. So let's fire off Swords of Plowshares on that. My opponent still gets a card out of their companion. If I can resolve this Court of Grace, I am in such a good position, but not hit that necessary land drop. Like, the more turns I miss this land drop, the more turns my opponent has to just find something like an Endurance that will just cripple me. Sure. Taiga even. Wow. Spirit of Labyrinth pre-combat? Question mark, question mark, question mark? I think so. I get the extra point of power. Crash in for my 2, and then probably Swords to Plowshares. Oh, not Swords to Plowshares and Endurance. Fantastic. Alright, so what do you have over there? Like a Prismatic Ending for Spirit would make sense. Yep. Alright. I would really like to draw a land. It's turn 9, and I only have 3 of them. Alright, you're at 15. I'll play a Vial. Okay. Alright. Pick the Vial up. I will never draw this land. Oak. Alright, so I can't really cast this Skyclave right now. I'm just gonna kind of chill on this. Definitely nervous. No shuffle on Ponder. Okay. It's Uro time. It's Teferi time, which makes Endurance better against me. Alright. Yeah, you can return that to my hand. I get to put it right back in with Aether Vial. Like, I'm good with that. Yes. Do this. My opponent's got the Endurance. It really sucks for me. I still think I go for the attack. Like, it's very good if it works. Actually, no, I can cast them as though they have Flash, but the Fairy overrides that. I can't Flash in Skyclave. Alright. So be it. You can nuke my graveyard. Endurance plus Teferi is just so damn good against my deck. Alright, goodbye. I think I'm just going to plan on killing this Teferi in combat. And I'm just going to Skyclave Endurance. Junk that. I've got other ways that I can play this, but I can avoid using a card on Teferi and keep a Swords to Plowshares around for, like, the next Endurance or Uro or whatever. I would like to do that. Alright, tap this. Yes. Rattle chains. And guess I tick this up. I have very impactful 3-drops. I do not want that. Please don't have second endurance. Back. Fire Blast is fine. Yep. This is actually good for me, right? This does give me Court of Grace. Because I'm planning on playing Court of Grace next turn, I probably have to remove this, even though that's kind of a shit play in a vacuum. This Teferi going up to 3 is really annoying, though. Alright, let's always no to this vial. Rattle chains, sure. I can't Force of Will if my opponent has a Force of Will, because Teferi. Snapcaster, sure. That means my opponent gets to become the Monarch. And they have Snapcaster, Force of Will. Oh. Or you're just going to counter it. That, too. Alright. Fairy really shuts down my whole deck. This is frustrating. My opponent's deck is also just, like, tailor-made to beat my deck, right? Like, probably somewhere between 8 and 12 1-mana removal spells. Plus all the, like, Teferis and Endurances that bully me in the mid-game. I'm somewhat surprised that my opponent... Oh, I didn't always yield to this, sure. Anyway, I'm somewhat surprised that my opponent let that Teferi go out of play. I don't know if they realize how good it actually is. I can Force of Will this and force the Snapcaster out of my opponent's hand. I think I need to do that. Alright. Pitch Rattle Chains. My opponent can Snapcaster Pyroblast. Yeah. That's fine. I just can't deal with that Snapcaster just chilling in hand at all times, threatening to just junk my board or replay that expressive iteration. Okay, so that's my Swords to Plowshares, and then I'm hellbent against the deck that is much better at top decking than I am. I think I'm ready to concede this game. Like, I am... Oh my god. You have, like, a Spell Pierce to answer that? Oh, they're Pyroblasting their own Uro to keep it around. Alright, I've already used my Court of Grace, which is my best way to beat what my opponent is doing. I think I'm dead unless I draw a Remorseful Cleric right here. I did not. This one's over. I am comfortable conceding here. GG's. Hey, if you made it this far in the video, it's pretty obvious that you're enjoying my content. Consider doing something to help me, whether it's something as small as leaving a like or subscribing to my channel, or doing something cool like doing a donation deck list, or even cooler, a dealer's choice donation deck list. Just saying, I get to do shenanigans every time that happens. Okay, back to the show. Alright, I've got a 1-lander here that I just have to mulligan. This hand is fine. Wasteland is going to be very good against me. So, the real question here is, do I pitch or keep the Swords to Plowshares? I'm going to pitch it. I'm also going to get a Tundra on turn 1. So a Wasteland is already going to be cripplingly good against me, and I don't want to, like, draw a basic land of some kind and then be Wastelanded off a color. If I'm going to get Wastelanded and, like, I'm not necessarily playing around a Wasteland well by getting a basic here is what I'm getting at. Because if I get, like, a basic Plains, I might be able to cast this, but not this, or vice versa. If I get the island. Alright, Diamond. So we're potentially playing against lands. Okay, Bog Stage. Alright, I'm officially scared. Merit Lodge could come down very quickly. Alright, so we're playing against an Urza's Saga lands variant, sure. I'm now glad I left the basics in the deck for a different reason. Probably need the Spirit of the Labyrinth in play now. Just for its 3 power, and then I curve Lord into Lord and hope that that Goldfish is my opponent. Alright, so opponent's at 18. And I hit for 7 next turn in all likelihood. Okay. Life from the Loam, Ancient Tomb, wow. Life from the Loam starts to look really scary here. But opponent is on a colored mana bottleneck currently. Let's throw in a captain. Make the Wanderer one bigger. I get 7 damage this turn, bringing my opponent to 11. Which does mean I have a theoretical goldfish next turn. So are you going to Thespian? Yeah, sure. Stage copy Ghost Quarter. That's fine. Like, I have basics in my deck to fetch out. So I'm not going to, like, run into, like, a Tabernacle situation here where that just beats me. Alright, I think I honestly got kind of lucky there. I think my opponent getting a Life from the Loam beats me pretty hard. Okay. I probably want Force of Negation in this matchup. It exiles Loam and counters some of the other things that are important. Like, I think I can consider Force, Surgical, Prismatic Ending just as a 1-mana answer to a Mox or an Exploration or something is not crazy either. I don't know how good Surgical actually is in that, like, my opponent can just beat me with Valakut Explorations and Fields of the Dead and that sort of stuff pretty easily, even if I extract a Life from the Loam. Life from the Loam, Surgical Extraction type Graveyard Hate has gotten considerably worse versus lands. I guess I can also consider Kataki for the Urza Saga Construct tokens, but my opponent, in theory, should be pretty good at paying for them. Court of Grace is good if I can get it into play. I'm not sure that I can get it into play reasonably on the draw. I don't know. Maybe I go these out, play those in their spots. Spirit of the Labyrinth is a 3-power attacker. That's kind of its thing here. Don't know how valuable Rattle Chains is. I still think I like my Aether Vials, even if I'm bringing in Kataki. Maybe I trim a couple of Rattle Chains for these cards. Maybe the path is a bit... no, I need to answer a Merilage. Hand does not do anything early. This hand does not have a 3rd land for all its 3 drops. I think I'm just going to ship this one. Oh, okay. I think okay. I have a Force of Negation for, like, a Loam or a Valakut Exploration or something else that otherwise is going to kill me. I don't think I use it on a regular Exploration. I'm gonna pass on that. Like, there's some worlds where I just get, like, Merit-lodged pretty quickly for doing that, but... like, if that happens, that happens. I am going to attack this Taiga. I don't know how many colored sources my opponent is actually going to have in their opening hand, and since I have a Force of Negation for a Life from the Loam, this is a way to just steal a win on what otherwise might be a somewhat weak hand. Like, they could just have another fetch land in hand, but there's a lot of colorless producing lands in that deck. Yeah. They have Exploration, so they could have played another land, and they just, like, physically do not have it. That is very good for me. Dark Depths, GG. No. Yeah, you can copy my Tundra. That does not produce your primary colors. Alright. That's a very good top deck. Alright, let's pick Vial up. Well, that's just awkward for both of us now, isn't it? Alright, fetch Tundra. I'll play this, right? Like, this does tax my opponent's mana harder than it does mine, right? Because, like, they're going to have Constructs and the Shadow Spear to pay for. A Wasteland on my end would be very strong. Are you going to pay for this? I assume yes, right? Is like pay and make. That's their turn cycle. I will probably ditch this Aether Vial in a few turns. Like, once I deploy Drogskol Captain and any 3-drops that I draw over the course of a few turns, this Vial might not be a better use of my mana than actually using my mana. Alright, so my opponent took like 3 minutes thinking about it and then ultimately sacrificed the Shadow Spear. This is the glory of editing, you don't have to see that. I will dump in one of these Mausoleum Wanderers end of turn. I do not want both of these in play, though. I want to always have a blue card in hand to pitch. Alright, let's pick up Vial. I'll pay for Vial. This keeps me from hard casting a Drogskol Captain this turn. Ooh. So an Urza Saga token would be a 1/1 currently. I don't want to lose Kataki in combat. So I'm just going to go ahead and swing in with a Mausoleum Wanderer. And then after blocks, I will go ahead and tap this and put in the Spirit of the Labyrinth to increase this thing's power by 1. Knocks my opponent to 15. We'll see whether or not they're going for like a copy Urza's Saga line, or if they're just going to like make their tokens and call that good without taking life. Okay, they are going for a line where they copy Urza's Saga. So their goal is going to be create like an Urza Saga that they get to keep like doing its thing indefinitely. That's fine. So I guess I'm worried about like an expedition map here. Like expedition map, yeah, just goes and gets something that makes a Merit Lodge, and I'm not super good at dealing with that currently. Got flyers that can chump block, but they can make a Merit Lodge immediately. I don't know what my opponent is tanking on. This whole situation seems very straightforward to me. Okay, there's the sacrifice for expedition map. They're going for a Yavimaya. Does that mean that you have the Dark Depths in hand already? And if you just played towards a Loam, I am going to destroy you for doing so. Yep. Goodbye Mausoleum Wanderer. Goodbye Loam. I probably just win this game now. Yeah. Yeah, you may absolutely have an exploration. So, I think I'm going to go ahead and tick this vial up to 3. I'll pay for it. There's a world where I draw the 2-mana Lord, where I don't actually want to have paid for this Aether Vial. Yeah, or another 2-drop. That's okay. Next turn, I probably just sacrifice this Aether Vial. Alright, in goes Drogskol Captain, buffing my team, and then buffing Mausoleum Wanderer an extra time. And my opponent is dead next turn. Probably even through their Urza Saga token blocker. Alright, now I'll go ahead and chip in. Alright, opponent's at 5. Definitely got lethal through a blocker next turn. Let's see if they can pull any fuckery. Like, there are absolutely Glacial Chasm type cards in their deck that could do cool things. Alright, I think I am going to go ahead and drop my Aether Vial here. I would rather just play Rattle Chains. It helps me get 1 more potential point of damage in this turn. I'll give the Captain Hexproof. I guess I could have... this has Flash. I could have done this later. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm very bored right now. Just attacking with my Flyer. I can get more points of damage in if I attack in with multiple creatures. I guess like just getting in for the extra 2 points of damage means that either one of my Flyers is lethal next turn. Yeah, I should have just waited on this. Then I have the kill this turn. But as you can see, I am up a very, very, very large amount of clock. Yeah, that's fine. All right, good stuff. I should be able to beat most things that my opponent can do here. Like, I'm just going wide. My opponent probably can't deal with all 3 of these bodies. They also did not make a construct token or float mana. Yep, and there is the concession. So we are 1 and 2 now. Round 4 opening hand is pretty medium. Being on the draw, I'm going to keep it and hope that I draw another creature. I think another creature rounds out this hand pretty well. Alright, so I'm likely playing against Blue-Red Delver. I do not want more lands here. Absolutely do not. Alright, so opponent is brainstorming and looking for a Daze to counter this. Did they find it? They found it. My hand is bad enough that I'll probably take a turn off to play around Daze for the rest of the game. Like, I have all of these lands, I might as well try to make use of them. That becomes slightly more dubious if my opponent plays a threat here. Okay. Will I be able to take a turn off? I will take a turn off. I think it is worth 3 damage to play around days. Alright, opponent has an expressive iteration now. I'll take my 3 and go to 16. That's fine. I knew that was coming. Alright, yeah, ponder away. Wonder if my opponent is playing around my potential dazes as well. Another Delver. That's not great for me. Do I force? I don't really want to force. I'd rather force an expressive iteration, but this is a lot of power on board, and I'm going to be playing like crappy Supreme Phantoms for a couple of turns. I'm going to not Wasteland. I need my mana in play to do stuff, I think. Okay. My opponent just F6'd my turn. They don't have counter magic, so I took 3 extra points of damage and fell further behind on board for playing around days. Alright. Opponent now has a Force of Will to back up their expressive iteration. Oh, they're Grixis. Interesting. I mean, yeah. That's happening. Alright, I think I've lost this one. Take 6 here, go to 10. My opponent can counter my first removal spell for a Delver, or my first creature that actually can trade with this. So I'm going to try to keep my opponent off of black, and I'll cast this Supreme Phantom. I don't super care if it gets Force of Willed. I'm trading for 2 cards at that point. Like, this card does nothing right now. I would be fine trading it for a Force of Will or a Lightning Bolt. Like, I know, I think I just have to put this card into play rather than wait another turn. I basically need running top decks for the next 3 turns, or I think I'm dead. Like, the Cavern makes it so that I can play around the Force of Wills to some extent, but this is probably just death for me. Like, my opponent casts an expressive iteration here. They go up in cards. They'll have something to pitch to the Force of Will still. Jeez. Yeah, I think another Delver is just something that I just absolutely cannot beat here. Yep. Yeah, Source of Plowshares just... Actually, even casting the Swords of Plowshares doesn't do anything. My opponent still has 4 on board. I'm just dead to that. Hello, did you know that the Ragavan ban did not make Delver really worse against these sorts of decks? Did I talk about that already? I think I talked about that already. Alright, let's get a path and a prismatic ending in here and go down some Force of Wills. Yeah, this hand is pretty good. It does not have removal, but I have multiple lords and the ability to like make them uncounterable either through Vial or through counter of Cavern of Souls, or both. Like, I think this is a fine starting point for a hand. Alright, hell yeah, we got a Murktide. Absolutely fine with that trade. Wastelands are going to be very good on my opponent's side of the battlefield this match. Or this game, rather. Well, I mean, this match, too. Alright. So, I think under almost all circumstances, I am just going to be jamming, like, Lord into Lord into Lord. Opponent, like, really should not be F6ing my turn like that, but okay. Okay, sure. I have more. I will keep playing them. Cavern, Spirit. Do I want to just play multiple creatures this turn? No. I want to set up multiple Drogskol Captains at the same time, because in the world where my opponent does not answer this with a Lightning Bolt, and they like tap their mana to do something else, like play, say, a Young Pyromancer, and I just get 2 of these in play, like, that's just lights out. Like, my creatures never die. That's fine. Sure, take your land. Let's see if we get Murktided this turn, because I'll die to it. There's the fetch, enough cards in graveyard to Murktide. I don't have a removal spell for it currently, so I'll just lose to it. Yep. Isn't Legacy a fun format right now? It's so great after the ban. Oh, damn it. Okay, Plains is good. That means, like, my spells that actually could counter that are live. Alright, and get my Lord in play. Morsel Cleric. unfortunately not really good graveyard hate for Murktide Regent. Like, you can blow it preemptively if maybe your opponent has, like, a Murktide. Yeah, opponent has the 2 power, or the 2 mana necessary to, like, not let me remove that. I'm like, probably dead in 3 turns. I can do some chump blocking at some point, but, like, as soon as I'm in the Abyss versus Murktide Regent, I've lost, basically. So, like, I'll play out my creatures to make Mausoleum Wanderer larger. But, like, I have 2 choices to win this game. It's either top deck an answer to Murktide Regent, or kill my opponent before they kill me. It's not a good situation to be in. Hey, do you think I should make the Murktide Regent bigger by doing the whole sacrifice Remorseful Cleric thing? I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm going to take my 8 here. I'll leave back Wanderer to block in this next turn cycle. Okay. That being in this deck too just is, like, not great for me. Like, I prevent that draw with the Spirit, but, like, that's not enough right now. Cool. Yeah, so now I'm in the Abyss versus Murktide Regent. So I think this game is over in my opponent's favor. Any like force of will or force of negation type effect is just absolutely going to beat me here. Yeah, if people wonder why I talk about banning Murktide Regent, it's how just awful it makes these games. Alright, so this will be my last draw to find something that deals with Murktide Regent. I'll Remorseful Cleric here, and it's draw something that answers Murktide, or I die. I die. GG's. Okay. So, this has a very good Aether Vial curve, and I will automatically lose this game if my opponent has a counter spell for Aether Vial or a Prismatic Ending. The Swords to Plowshares is also uncastable. I think there's too much risk in this hand. I'm going to try to find something safer. This is much safer. So I'm keeping... I'm going to toss the Skyclave, question mark? Like, there's a very long discussion to be had about, like, the pros and cons of keeping each one of those things. Like, if I'm playing against a combo deck, the Skyclave is just, like, dead. And if I'm playing against a Wasteland deck, losing on a Cavern can be kind of bad here. Alright, so we're playing against either Elves or Post. That's not a great draw for me. I'll play this on Spirit. We're going to sandbag my actual, like, mana source here. And I deal the most damage if I just play Remorseful Cleric this turn. I'm honestly kind of hoping this is Post. I don't think I'm going to beat Elves. Okay. So we're actually on some sort of Dark Depths deck instead. Which is another, like, reasonable thing to think with an Elvish Reclaimer. I have plenty of blockers and an okay number of removal spells for this matchup. Now I... Really? Tradesies? I'll absolutely tradesies. Oh, hold on. Absolutely tradesies. Like, I don't want you tutoring. I have Stone Cold nothing, and my deck has no sources of card advantage, so my position isn't actually all that good. I think my opponent is almost certainly going to win this game. Like, that's probably one of my bigger complaints about this deck, is just that I do not have any source of card advantage. Like, there's no Goblin Ringleader sort of card here that just really allows me to go ham and just pull ahead. I'm going to tick up my Vial to 3. Alright. Spoiler's okay. I will absolutely just flash it in and use it to try to kill a Bob if that Bob attacks. I don't know whether or not it will. Okay, Crop Rotation is scary for me, and maybe a reason why I have to sandbag a Spell Queller. Doubt that Bob isn't just absolutely fucking horrifying either. Yeah, alright. I can't let that happen. So I'll counter this. My opponent will have crop rotation, so as soon as they find one piece of their combo, they have the other piece. But like double Bob is just so much card advantage for my opponent. And again, card advantage is an area of weakness for this deck, so I assume this is kind of the end of the turn at this point. Yeah, seems like it. So this is my one at 3. I'll always no to that one. And I'll take the other one up to 2. Alright. So let's put in this Phantom and crash in for my 1 extra point of damage. Everything's kind of on the table here. I'm sort of hoping that between these two flying creatures and like the Bob that I can deal enough damage before my opponent just outright kills me with a Merit Lodge. But I don't know how likely that actually is to happen. Alright, that Thoughtseize doesn't do anything. That's a dead card. Well, it's not fully a dead card, right? Like, because it can help play around some sorts of Plowshare situations that could happen. Sure. Uh-huh. That's horrifying. Now, like, the Merit Lodge is just safe. Now that my opponent doesn't have... Actually, no, I don't want to fetch, because there's some worlds where I can, like, Swords to Plowshares my own creatures in a way that's profitable for me. Always no to that. That's the Swords to Plowshares. Opponent can lose 2 things to Sylvan Safe, to making the Merit Lodge. Still have plenty for Sylvan Safekeeper. I junk my Supreme Phantom. I only answer things for a turn, and then the Sylvan Safekeeper still has extra food. Accordingly, I should just crash in and hope that my opponent, like, does not have, like, Spirit Guide, crop rotation. Do I fire off Swords of Plowshares on Dark Confidant as a land destruction spell? I think I'm good with it. I'm currently not beating the Merit Lodge if my opponent can make it quickly anyway. I thought they were going to protect there. I guess they just like value making and protecting the Merit Lodge no matter what. Thought they'd want to protect their way to dig for it. I was mistaken. They may mean they already have the way to dig for it. Alright, I'll crash in and I've got a Lord here. Alright, so in declare blockers. Let's put in this Phantom. Alright, opponent goes to 4. They make a Merit Lodge, I block with Supreme Phantom, and then I still have exactly 4 damage in the air. Make a Merit Lodge and block this, I still have exactly 4 damage in the air. So it has to be like a Merit Lodge into a Sajiri step. Alright, there's a crop rotation. Sure. Yep, that's fine. And get your 2020 Tentacle Monster. Do you have it? Thoughtseize me. I absolutely respect it. And I'll take my obligatory block here. And then my opponent dies in the air on the crack pack. Nice. Okay. How do I want to approach this matchup? Court of Grace is sort of interesting. Like, it's obviously very slow, but it makes a blocker every single turn for Merit Lodge. I might play that. I want Prismatic Ending for Elvish Reclaimers. I want Path to Exile as a removal spell. How do I feel about, like, Force of Negation? My opponent's going to go for a lot of things that matter on my turn rather than their turn. I don't know how into that I am. There's also worlds where I play Surgical Extraction, but, like, Queller seems kind of slow here. Good, but slow. I want to do a play draw thing. Or do I just want to, like, board down on, say, Spirit of the Labyrinth? Spirit of the Labyrinth could be good against a Sylvan Library, though, so, like, there's that. How do I feel about the Force of Will effects? Medium? I don't know. Like, maybe since I, like, know my opponent has a bunch of ground-based creatures, I do just go down on the Spirit of the Labyrinth. The Spirit of the Labyrinths also don't pitch to the Forces. I think the Spirits are more justifiable on the play as well. Deck not having any card advantage is rough. Like, this is a reasonable Aether Vial hand that gets kind of bad if I have to use that Force of Will. I'm gonna keep it. Like, okay, Thoughtseize, sure. So I probably lose either Vial or Force of Will here. Probably Force of Will. Like, taking my Force of Will opens up, like, Bobs and just, like, combo pieces into being good in a way that they aren't currently. Okay, the Vial is gone instead. I'm fine with that. It makes my turn 1 a little awkward, because... Never mind. Finishing the thought, because I want to play out Mausoleum Wanderer, but I also want to have a card to pitch to Force of Will. I probably need to counter a Bob or a Vampire Hexmage if my opponent were to play one of those 2 cards this turn. Alright, sure. Alright, Captain is reasonable. I think I'm just going to fetch a basic right here. Basic Plains, Cleric, and let's buff that by 1. This is now a respectable clock backed by a Force of Will. Kind of my biggest issue here is my opponent can just, like, play a Dark Depths, and then shit's real awkward for me. Yeah, so Dark Depths currently taps for mana because of Urborg. Yup. I'm not willing to counter a Mox Diamond here. Opponent is thinking about whether or not they want to make the token now. Looks like they're going for yes. Makes a Caracas that I top deck better. Alright. Dream Phantom. So I will just play out my Lord and call it a turn. And I am kind of in the abyss again, where I'm just going to be chump blocking forever. Alright. That's turn. What? I have, like, Caracas plus, like, 6 removal spells for this thing. I can chump block for a while if need be. Thoughtseize takes my Force of Will, clearing the way for a crop rotation to kill me. Or actually, no, that's not true, right? I have creatures of multiple different colors. Yeah, that's actually okay. So that means that I want to keep this Remorseful Cleric around for as long as possible, and so I want to chump block with Mausoleum Wanderer. Yeah, and then next turn I can play, like, a blue creature and have, like, a white and a blue creature back as blockers. Crop rotation is a thing. I'd like to do this when the Mox Diamond is tapped if possible. I always attack with this. I just block with Supreme Phantom. Yeah, if my opponent crop rotations in order to try to push the damage through, then I Swords to Plowshares in response, and that's pretty darn good for me. I do need to, like, actively keep this pressure up, or I'm not going to kill my opponent. Actually, I probably don't even Swords to Plowshares the Merit Lodge yet, right? Like, I have 7 damage on board currently. Yeah, okay. So this is going to Sejiri Step on blue. That's fine. Now I have to Swords to Plowshares, which means my opponent gets a billion D life. Alright, there's protection from blue. Oh, actually, my line is probably Swords to Plowshares Supreme Phantom, right? Just go to 21 and then have 7 in the air. That probably wins the game more of the time, right? Or no, it's not 7 in the air. I'll lose a Lord. Alright. I will remove the Tentacle Boy. Oh, that's a fine draw. Like, now I just have a little bit of backup. Or 7, 8, 9 this turn. Okay, this is actually still a pretty swift clock, right? Like, this is a 2-turn clock now. 7, 10, 12, 12, 12, 24. Good stuff. I can Supreme Phantom. Actually worth 5 damage. Yeah. Okay, cool. So we end up kind of redeeming this league after a rough start and getting a 2-3 finish, which is okay. Overall thoughts on the deck list. I don't think this keeps up with Legacy standards. So comparing this to other tribal decks, this is less aggressive than Merfolk, or less aggressive than Slivers. And it doesn't have the endgame inevitability that a deck like Goblins or Death and Taxes does. And I think this kind of leaves this in a spot where this is kind of an anemic tribal deck. I don't think there's enough support for this tribe currently in Legacy. And I think there's some problems with this deck list. So this deck list like wants to be this aggressive deck, but cards like Spell Queller are trying to force you into a control role. And this deck, or maybe a tempo role is a better way to say this. And this deck's not a very good tempo deck, right? Like, compared to the Merfolk Lords that start out as 2/2s, like those just get bigger faster, right? And a lot of the creatures that I'm playing in my deck aren't super aggressive by Legacy standards and don't trade super well. So like I'm trying to be this tempo deck that can't kill quickly enough to just really take advantage of just like force of willing and making an opening. And that's letting my opponents live to the point where their expressive iterations, their Uros, and their Yorians end up being good. So I don't know how to adjust this deck list to make it better, because I think the answer is wait until more creatures are printed. Like, you can max out on more Skyclave Apparitions, but that doesn't solve your card advantage problem. That doesn't solve your, like, Murktide Regent problem. Just being in the Abyss versus Murktide Regents and Merit Lodges and such just, like, did not feel great. And I also don't think you're the best versus combo decks, because like you need to tap out to play these creatures in a lot of circumstances when you don't have a rattle chains to give everything flash. And so like putting cards like Flusterstorm into your deck list is going to be a little questionable, because like you need to be tapping out for these like Supreme Phantoms and Drog Skull Captains so that you can actually win the game. So like I just don't think this tribe is here in Legacy right now. Like maybe in Modern things are okay, but this just didn't feel. Not in a single one of my rounds did I feel like I had the better deck. And I feel like I only won one of my rounds because like my opponent was either like new to the deck or like not fully paying attention or something like that. Like that lands player that was down like 9 minutes on clock. Like, I don't know that I should have won that one. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, click the like button. If you have ideas about making this deck list better, please throw them in the comments section so that the donor can read them, because I don't really have too much constructive advice here come the end of this. Have a great rest of the day, folks, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.